What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and this is my video for the Miami Dolphins versus Los Angeles Rams game yesterday. This is my post-game analysis video. As I do on Mondays following, I literally just finished watching the game again. I watched it in its condensed form. I didn't watch the whole 2.5 hours with the fucking commentary in between plays and shit like that. Didn't need to, but I did want to watch it again because there was a lot of nuance in this game, a super lot of nuance, right? So overall, obviously great day. The Dolphins won. They beat a good team, right? So real quick to kind of give you, in a nutshell before I get to the, the stats and the breakdown and the analysis, the in-depth parts, and the stuff like that, to give kind of a gist, put it in a nutshell. They played overall well enough, obviously, to get the W. They played a good Rams team. They came into this game 5-2. They do have a good offense, although their offense definitely did struggle. It's fair to note that they did have to travel, obviously, from LA to Miami, so it's a long trip. They were also on a short week since they just played on Monday against the Bears. They lost Jalen Ramsey in the first quarter. He ended up coming out of the game with some kind of injury. They did start with him. It didn't really matter at the end of the day because their defense really didn't stay on the field for very much time. But anyway, just, to throw that in there as a little bit of additional context. And also, it was really interesting. At one point, they did show on the sideline, the temperature on the sideline. There was a side-by-side image of, a couple temperature readings, one from the Dolphins side and one from the Rams side. And there was literally a 60-degree difference. It was 80 degrees. According to this fucking thermometer, it was 80 degrees on the Dolphins side and 140 on the Rams side. So that could also have something to do with it, that heat stress. Anyway, those are just, contextual factors. Honestly, I'm not sure those things really had all that much to do with it, although it could have had something to do with it considering the fact that the Rams offense in particular was not playing all that well. Goff, even more in particular, he was quite off target all day. But anyway, so look, the Dolphins won an awesome game. It was fun to watch. It was exciting, mostly because of the defense though. So to keep it real, honestly, the offense did not perform very well. They actually performed pretty bad, considering everything, and they were also the least impactful unit out of the three: defense, special teams, and offense, and had to do the least, despite the fact that they actually had 2 touchdowns. So I know that's 2 out of the 4 touchdowns, in fact. And I know that seems a little confusing, but when you actually get the full context and the full detail, it starts to make a lot more sense, right? Just real quick, right? So, and not to take anything away from it, because it's good that they were able to capitalize, but their 2 touchdowns were on super short fields, right? The first one was from 33 yards out, and the second one was from a yard out, right? Which actually should have been the second defensive touchdown, honestly. Kyle Van Noy, man, he got robbed. He was right there. And then it was basically padded stats for the offense because they ran one play. It was a Gaskin run for 1 yard and a touchdown. So it was really just, padded stats for the offense. And they didn't really do much, right? They didn't have to try very hard for it. It was just a one play, get it in, because the defense set them up for it. Now that's great. Again, it's great that they took advantage of it, got the score, didn't have to settle for a field goal. And then also great on the Dolphins defense, especially because, look, I said that I was worried about some of these guys because some of these guys do have some injury histories. They're also, some of these guys like Shaq Lawson and Kyle Van Noy and Landon Roberts, they played in great systems in other places, right? And just had kind of, mediocre, stats at best, right? and then, or solid, good, but not like, you know, double-digit sacks and fucking, you know, off-the-chart numbers. And they weren't stars. They were good pieces of the defenses they were in, right? And I thought they were, you know, going to be overpaid. And to be clear also, too, you know, again, a lot of the teams that we have been playing, for further added context, have been really beat up, etc., etc. But the Dolphins, I thought going into the season, the Dolphins' defense was going to be where the strength was, and the offense was going to struggle. The year started out a little bit different. The defense actually struggled quite a bit at the very beginning of the year in the first few games, and the offense played better than expected. They weren't great. They haven't really particularly been fantastic almost really at any point in the season, even in, you know, their past 3 wins. But they were doing pretty good, right? And they were moving the ball. The offensive line was doing better than expected, you know, whatever. And obviously, too, some of that had to do, of course, with the fact that we were playing really beat up teams. The 49ers, I mean, they had no pass rush, no secondary. The Jets super beat up and a bad team going into it. And then, you know, the Patriots were completely different defense because of, you know, opt-outs and people leaving in free agency. The Bills were missing Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, which allowed us to attack the field. That was pretty much where all of our offense came from in that game. Right, so there is all that context, but they were playing better than expected. Well, honestly, in this game, the offense unquestionably took a step backwards. It did, and that is bore out by not just the play on the field and the tape, but also the stats. So we'll get to that in a minute. That hopefully will change, and if the Dolphins defense can stay healthy and keep performing at the level that they are now and have been, because admittedly they have been getting better. They had a rough start, but they have been starting to gel. They have been healthy, although unfortunately, you know, we did suffer some injuries in this game. We'll have to keep an eye on it and see how it goes, but particularly on defense, we suffered several injuries, but we'll also get to that more in a bit as well. But if they can stay healthy, then it could potentially give Tua at least an opportunity to kind of settle out in there. I still don't like him being in there, and he took hits that I was not comfortable with, especially early on, that sack fumble. But, you know, they're going to have him in there. They won the game, so he's definitely going to start next week against the Cardinals, who are a good team this year for sure. But have started to have some injuries too. Like they're going to be out. Like Kenyon Drake, I think, is probably going to miss that game, and he's been huge for them since going there. So, but you know, obviously that's more next week. We'll get to that when we get there. But if they can stay healthy, then they could at least ease the burden on Tua a little bit, and let him kind of, you know, hopefully come into his own in the live bullets, right? Unfortunately, the problem could be, now we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. We're about halfway through the season now, so we still have another half of the year to play. But if the Dolphins defense starts losing guys, I mean, they've already lost, you know, Devon Godshaw, who theoretically can come back if we do make it to the playoffs. But if we don't, then he is expected to be out for the rest of the season. You know, but like Byron Jones, Brandon Jones, Nick Needham, Xavier Howard, fucking pretty much our entire secondary, but also, you know, Van Ginkel and you know, our linebackers are getting beat up, our defensive line's getting beat up. So if they can stay healthy, and you know, the Dolphins have been one of the healthier teams just in general anyway. So if they can remain that, then they can absolutely make a push for the playoffs. It's still going to be tough to win the division. The Bills did just win over the Patriots this past week. I think it was the Patriots that they played. Anyway, yeah, it was the Patriots. Anyway, so they did just get a win there, and now they are 6-2. The Dolphins are 4-3, so it is still going to definitely be a fight for the division. We play them at the very end of the season, so the last game of the year is against the Bills, so that could have playoff implications, possibly even division implications. But if I'm keeping it real, the only way we're going to actually win the division is if we just beat them outright in record, right? So right now they're 6-2. We're 4-3. Now they've actually played an additional game than we have because they haven't had their bye week so far. But they're obviously they have 2 more wins than we do and 1 less loss, right? So they've played an additional game because we've had our bye and they haven't quite yet. Although I think they might be going on their bye this week. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, so obviously our overall record isn't good enough to be in first place. But then you look at the division record and the Bills are currently 4-0. They're currently 4-0 and we're only halfway through the season. So, and one of their last 2 games is against us. So, you know, that could have some playoff implications, although not likely because we are already 1-2 in the division. So, but you know, we should at least beat the Jets. The Patriots, we're going to have to go play them in Foxborough. I mean, at this point, with the way that they are having issues, and especially as they start to have, you know, more injuries throughout the year, that's definitely a winnable game. So we could get to 3-2 off those 2. But yeah, I mean, it depends, right? So I'm not sure if they have to play the Jets or the Patriots again. I'm not sure who they've played twice. But if they win that other game and go to 5-0 before we play them, then there's no way that we're going to be able to, the division record will really even matter. Because, I mean, honestly, for the division record to even matter at this point, they literally have to fucking lose their next 2 games. So they would have to, in the division, they would have to lose against us at the end of the year, and then they would have to lose to whoever they play again. If it's the Jets, not likely. And the Patriots, honestly, not likely at this point. So there is a substantial chance that they will end up 5-0 within the division. So based off of division tiebreaker, it doesn't seem very likely that the Dolphins are going to be able to win the AFC East off of that. Also, conference record, they are 5-2 and we are 2-2. So based off of divisional and conference records, those do not look like they are going to be much of a play for the Dolphins. So if they're going to win the division, they're going to have to do it. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's some, theoretical, mathematical percentage, winning it otherwise, but I'm pretty sure it's like super small, and I'm pretty sure just about the only way they're going to actually win the division is to actually have a base record that is better than them. So, if they go, but that's going to be tough too. That's actually going to be tough too, because they're 6-2 right now, and the Bills, I mean, they could easily be at least a 10-win team. Are the Dolphins going to make it to 10 wins? That's another 6 games. Now, based on their schedule and the way that the, season is played out, with the way teams are affected by injuries, so on and so forth, maybe, I mean, there's definitely a chance we beat the Chargers, the Broncos, the Jets, the Bengals. There's 4 wins right there. The Patriots, that's 5 wins. That could get us to 9, potentially. The Raiders, the Bills, and the Cardinals, now we'll have to wait and see. Those are out of the remaining, and the Patriots in Foxborough. I'm sorry. It's not even in Foxborough. It's in Miami, because we played them at Foxborough to start the season. So that's definitely a winnable game. We'll have home field advantage there. They're going to have to travel to us. So look, yeah, I mean, maybe it's possible, especially, like I said, though, the Dolphins have to stay healthy. They absolutely have to fucking stay healthy. But if they can stay healthy, particularly that defense, and help Tua out. But look, at the same time, and I know I kind of sidetracked a little bit, and I do want to get to this breakdown, but They absolutely fucking have to stay healthy and give, you know, Tua that cushion, but also they're not going to be able to rely on you know, a special team score every game, right? Like they did in this one. They're not going to be able to rely on getting a defensive score in every game like this. Maybe they will in, you know, 1 or 2 other games. That would be great. But you're not going to get that every game, right? It's just improbable. It's not going to happen, right? Not every game. You might get it here and there, but not every game, right? You're not going to have 4 turnovers every game, right? So things like that you cannot rely on. And that's why I said it's going to be huge, though, that the Dolphins defense, at least over the next few weeks and really for the remainder of the season, if they want to be able to have a playoff push, potentially make it in as a wild card in the expanded you know, format, even if they can't take the division, the defense has to stay healthy. I mean, the team has to stay healthy overall, but primarily the defense, because that's what's going to give them the opportunity and at least allow the offense to, you know, give them a chance to pick it up before things potentially get derailed, right? So if the offense can't come really into their own over the next few weeks, but they do enough to, you know, win the game like they did today and help the team win like they did today, riding the back of the defense, then it might give them an opportunity to, you know, come into their own. But the defense has to stay healthy. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into this breakdown because, like I said, to be honest, the offense really did not play all that great. And, you know, this win was definitely riding on the shoulders of the defense. That was the primary thing. With special teams, overall, I said the impact of special teams and the offense was about even because the offense didn't really have to try all that hard. They had really short field, you know, position for their 2 scores. They punted or fumbled or, you know, whatever the rest of, you know, turned the ball over on the rest of their possessions, all of which, you know, they had to go the length of the field. Anytime that they had to do that, they couldn't do it, you know, so... But they did have 2 touchdowns. Whereas, you know, Jakeem Grant and the punt return team had to work harder on that 1 score than the offense had to work combined on their 2 scores, right? So that's why they're kind of even there. But ultimately, the offense was the worst performing unit on the field. So, but the Dolphins get the W, so they are now 4-3, and they are absolutely in the thick of the playoff race at the very least, if not the race for the division, which is still going to be super tough, especially since they got the win over the Patriots yesterday and increases not only their record to 6-2, but their divisional record to 4-0 and their conference record to 5-2. So, yeah. Anyway, and the Rams do drop to 5-3 with that loss. We beat them 28-17. So honestly, I mean, and that's the thing too, is they did beat a good team, so they didn't have the excuse of a bad team. And they beat a team that was overall pretty healthy. They did lose Jalen Ramsey in the first quarter. They lost Burgess last week. And they did have some other injuries. Kupp had a hand injury at some point. That was later on in the game though. Overall, not a huge factor. So not really an excuse in that regard either. So they beat a good team that came into this game 5-2, etc., etc. So those were not excuses, and so it was great. But you would have liked to see the offense do more, especially since, you know, everybody's like, man, Tua's going to come in and just light it up, and he's a superstar. And look, don't get me wrong. I love his skill set and stuff like that. I love the numbers he put up at Alabama and whatnot, but he still has a long way to go. And this game didn't really prove much of anything. It didn't show anything. All of his passes were short passes, you know, easy check downs, dump off, screens, or they ran the ball, right? And the couple opportunities where he did take down the field, he missed on. He wasn't particularly accurate. Everybody raves about his accuracy. He was not particularly accurate in this game. Again, though, to be fair, he is a rookie. It was his first start. It was a tough defense, etc., etc. So I'm not trying to knock on him, right? It's just a fact. It's just a reality. And he might be great, and I hope he is. But he wasn't in this game, right? He was very, very pedestrian. And so you would have liked to see the Dolphins score more points, particularly on offense. You would like to see them get over 30, et cetera, especially if they really want to be able to not just make it to the playoffs, but then actually maybe even have a push into the playoffs and get out of the wild card round. Because they scored over 30 points, I think, just once in the entire season, and that was against the 49ers, right? No, they did score over 30 points against the Jags, but barely. So 31 points. But they, to be able to play against the top teams, right? The Steelers, the Ravens, the Chiefs, they're going to have to be able to score more points than that, generally speaking, right? And so, you definitely wanted to see a lot more out of the offense. But they got the win, and that was wonderful. So let's get into the stats now to help paint an even broader, more colorful picture and give further detail and context. So total yards, we had 145. That was it. So literally 145 yards total for the offense. Not good. To their 471, right? So it was good that the Dolphins, on defense got a bunch of turnovers. They bent but didn't break, right? So on and so forth. So that's great. But, based off of those stat lines, you really honestly would think that the Rams would have won. And should a few key things happen differently, they absolutely could have won. We'll get to that a little bit more in the play-by-play. So let's just continue on with these stats for right now. Passing yards, we only had 90. Didn't even break 100. Let's see. They had 340. We only had 55 rushing yards, so our run game wasn't all that great. Either. To their 131. Our run defense, honestly, for the defense, the biggest critique there, though, was probably just that they weren't, at least in the beginning part of the game, they weren't doing well enough in the run game, right? Run defense. And they needed more tackles for loss. They needed to get in the backfield more and, ideally more than 2 sacks. 2's fine, 2's great, but ideally more, generally speaking, right? They did pick it up towards the end and were doing better in the run game towards the end. But also, to be fair, the Rams also had to start throwing it more because of the score, etc. So they definitely needed to pick up on the run defense and so on and so forth and getting a little bit more disruption in the backfield. But other than that, it's really just a minor critique because overall they did play pretty fucking phenomenally. Let's see. We only had 3 yards per play on offense. Obviously not anywhere near good enough. And 5.1 for them. We had 2 fumbles. They did as well. We didn't throw any interceptions. They threw 2. 25% on third down. Obviously not anywhere near good enough. They had 41. We lost the time of possession battle. 23 minutes and 31 seconds to their 36-29. We had 3 penalties to their 5. So penalties obviously played a little bit of a role, but obviously not very much. Minor in the overall context, but it did play a role and it was part of the context. But I mean, across the board, except for turnover margin, they absolutely won, right? They won in total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, yards per play. We were even on fumbles, but they threw the 2 interceptions. They won on third down rate, time of possession, and we won on penalties. So, like I said, if it wasn't for just a few key things. Now, like I said, there's a lot of nuance in this, and we're going to get to it a little bit more in depth in the play-by-play, but some of those turnovers were a little bit luck, right? Now, the Dolphins brought a lot of pressure, particularly in the first half. I wish they would have kept that up more in the second half, and that led to it a lot, right? Right now, part of the context is the Rams made a lot of mistakes, especially Goff. He was off target a lot, but part of it, right, because some of those individual plays, part of the result of that play is Goff being off target and, making a mistake. But some of it was also because the Dolphins were putting a lot of pressure. So, whereas, I've said in the past, for example, right, there were times where, some of these offenses we played, the Dolphins defense wasn't really even anywhere around them, didn't really even make a hit. And the receiver just dropped the ball, or, the quarterback just completely overthrew him, whatever. That's 100% a mistake on the other team's offense. This is more nuanced. It's more split, right? Anyway, so Tua was 12 for 22, only 54.5% completion percentage, so obviously not good. 93 yards, not anywhere near where you want it to be on this stat line. 1 touchdown, no interceptions though is good, and a respectable 80.3 passer rating. Obviously though, his stat line, especially for a quarterback who's supposed to be the franchise, who's supposed to be a superstar with all these, endorsement deals and blah, 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 right? And who was supposed to come in and just light it up, etc., etc., etc. And look, he didn't even really have an opportunity to make any rookie mistakes because the offense wasn't even really on the field. The Rams defense, aside from the 2 short field position drives the Dolphins have had, the Rams defense did their job. A bunch of 3 and outs, a bunch of punts, 9 punts. The Dolphins had to punt 9 times. Anyway, so he didn't even really have an opportunity to make any rookie mistakes yet. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out and how for example, it plays out next week. But yeah, so you definitely need to be better there. Not just him though, obviously the entire offense. The entire offense did not play all that well. Let's see, Jared Goff was 35 of 61. Also, that's another thing. They had, I think if I remember correctly, they had 87 plays on offense and we had 43, 44. So they had twice as many plays, right? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And Goff threw it 61 times. 61 times. But their run game, the other 20 some odd plays that were runs, actually were generally pretty productive. It was their passing game that was really not very productive. Anyway, in large part because Jared Goff was way off target all day. But that was in some degree because the Dolphins were bringing a ton of pressure, right? So it's important to ask the question why constantly until you get to the base root of why things were the way they were. That's how you get full context, right? Let's see. You keep asking the question until the question has no more answers to net, right? Anyway, he was 35 of 61, 57.4% completion percentage, so obviously not much better than Tua was, and not very good. But he did throw for 355 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 65.9 passer rating. So obviously Jared Goff was struggling, so was their offense. Let's see. Myles Gaskin led the way for us. 18 rushes, 47 yards, a touchdown, and a 2.6 average. Matt Breida, 4 rushes, 13 yards, and a 3.3. So obviously a lot left to be desired there in the run game. Darrell Henderson had 8 rushes for 47 yards and a 5.9 average for them. Malcolm Brown, 10 rushes, 40 yards, and a 4 average. Cam Akers, 9 rushes, 35 yards, and a 3.9 average. And we only had 55 rush yards. They had 131. So obviously big difference there. Let's see. Receiving, Durham Smythe was 2 of 2 for 16 yards. He led the way, right? Myles Gaskin, 3 of 6, 16 yards. Preston Williams, 2 of 5 for 15. Jakeem Grant, 1 of 2 for 15. Malcolm Perry, 1 of 1 for 10. Isaiah Ford, 1 of 1 for 10. Real quick, I want to note, there were at least 2 passes that Preston Williams just flat out dropped. Although I will say on at least one of them, there is an argument to be made that because of the angle that the ball, came to him and so on and so forth, because of, how it's delivered from a left-handed quarterback, that could have had something to do with it. Now, he's an NFL receiver. He should catch the ball, blah, 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 what have you. Yes, but it is worthy noting that there is probably still some chemistry that needs to build between, Tua and his receivers. And so we'll have to see how that plays out the rest of the season. Let's see. Jakeem Grant was 1 of 2 for 15. Oh, I already finished all that. Cooper Kupp led the way for them, 11 for 21 on 110 yards. Robert Woods, 7 of 8 for 85 and a score. Josh Reynolds, 4 of 9, 44. Gerald Everett, 5 of 9 for 32. Van Jefferson, 2 of 2 for 23. Cam Akers, 1 of 1 for 19. Malcolm Brown, 2 of 2 for 17. Tyler Higbee, 2 of 4 for 14. Darrell Henderson, 1 of 2 for 11. So obviously they did better at spreading it out. Got a lot more yards, a lot more production, was moving the ball more efficiently. That's actually... the funny thing is, too, is even though that's actually a pretty solid stat line for the receivers, it was their passing offense that was the biggest struggle for them, you know, in that game. So anyway, fumbles, Myles Gaskin had one, lost it. Tua had one, lost it. Jared Goff had 2 fumbles and lost them both. And Nasimba Webster had a fumble on a punt return, but did not lose it. Xavier Howard led the way for us on defense. 6 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 2 passes defense. Jerome Baker, 5 solo, 8 assisted, 1 pass defense. Kyle Van Noy, 5 solo, 4 assisted, 1 forced fumble. Fumble recovery and 2 passes defense. Nick Needham, 5 solo, 5 assisted tackles. Eric Rowe, 5 solo, 2 assisted, 1 interception for 4 yards and 5 passes defense. Eric Rowe had a hell of a game. Christian Wilkins, 3 solo, 2 assisted tackles with an interception for 8 yards and a pass defense. Landon Roberts, 3 solo, 1 assisted, 2 tackles for loss. Emmanuel Ogbah, 1 solo, 1 assisted, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and a pass defense. Shaq Lawson, 1 solo, 2 assisted, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. Andrew Van Ginkel, 2 assisted tackles, 1 fumble recovery, and a pass defense. Sam McGraven, I just forgot to, that was the end. I'm sorry, there was just some additional stats from the previous game that I forgot to take out of my template here. Anyway, so moving on, Sebastian Joseph led the way for them. 3 solo, 2 assisted tackles. Aaron Donald, 3 solo, 1 assisted, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 forced fumble. Despite the fact that they were hardly on the field, Aaron Donald was still a force. He was the one that got the strip sack at the very beginning of the game on Tua. Taylor Rapp, 3 solo, 1 assisted, 1 forced fumble, 1 pass defense. Troy Hill, 3 solo, 1 assisted, 1 fumble recovery. Kenny Young, 3 solo, 1 assisted, 1 pass defense. David Long, 3 solo tackles. Darius Williams, 2 solo with a pass defense. Then Leonard Floyd, 1 fumble recovery. Also, I want to give some props to the Dolphins defense for getting a bunch of, not just passes defense. Eric Rowe certainly had a bunch, but a bunch of them at the line of scrimmage too, which was great. And that was also in large part because, again, the Dolphins brought a ton of pressure, particularly in the first half. And you love to see that. Again, I hope they can stay healthy because that's going to be huge. Jason Sanders didn't kick any field goals, was 4-4 on his extra points. Kai Forbath was 1 of 2 on his field goals, so obviously they left 3 points out on the field there. And a couple other times they left some points on the field too. We'll get to that a little bit more. He had a long of 23. That was the one he made, and 2 of 2 on his extra points. Matt Hawk, again, had to punt 9 times with an average of 42.8. 5 inside the 20 and a long of 63. He did his business, though. Matt Hawk is a really good punter. So he balled out for his opportunities, but obviously you don't want to have him kick 9 times. Johnny Hecker had 6 punts, 47.3 average, 2 inside the 20 and a long of 62. Kickoff return, Jakeem Grant had 1 for 45. Like I said, special teams obviously contributed in a major way. Unfortunately, though, on that particular drive, they weren't able to do anything with it. They had to punt on that one. But it did set him up with really good field position. Nasimba Webster had 1 for 25 1 for 25. Xavier Jones had 1 for 4 for them. In the punt return, Jakeem Grant had 1 for an 88 yards and a touchdown. That was the special team score that we got. Nasimba Webster had 3 for a 2.3 average and a long of 5. One of those punts was where he had his fumble but managed to recover it. So key points and analysis for this game. Did we win? Yes, obviously. Wonderful. It was an exciting game. The defense played great for the vast majority of it. Couple minor things I would tweak, like I said, but overall they definitely rode us to the win. But getting a little bit more in detail just to get through this. So in the first quarter, the Rams did receive the ball to start. The Dolphins received it at the beginning of the second half. Unfortunately, they were not able to capitalize on that drive or really any drive in the second half. They didn't score any points, but it didn't matter at the end of the day. Because they did enough scoring in the first half. Let's see. The Rams punt after 5 plays on their first drive. Just real quick, this wasn't a super big factor in the game, but just a little context and just interesting because of how quickly a game can change and so on and so forth. And so the very first play of the game, the Rams have the ball. The Dolphins get a neutral zone infraction. costing them 5 yards, setting up a 1st and 5, whatever. And you're like, man, first play of the game, well, that kind of sucks. Not the greatest start, but they bounced back. They did manage to force a punt after those 5 plays, which included 2 batted passes at the line of scrimmage, and then they brought solid pressure on 3rd down to force, a missed throw by Jared Goff. So bounced back, started getting it going there on defense, and rebounded. We're like, okay, great. Then the Dolphins get the ball. They, on 1st down, ran the ball to Gaskin, picks up 3 yards. Not great. You would definitely want to have a little bit better than that. Obviously, we only averaged 3 yards per play, period, let alone in the run game. So you definitely want to do better than that, especially on 1st down. But, whatever. The big problem then came on the very next play. The second play of the Dolphins' first drive, Tua gets sacked and fumbles the ball because Aaron Donald got into the backfield and, caused some problems. And he took a pretty big hit there, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I just don't think it's worth the risk at all. Yeah, especially because, like I said, I mean, even in this win, he and the offense didn't play all that well. So, to me, I'm pretty sure that, Ryan Fitzpatrick could have at least done what Tua did today. I mean, I know he could have. He probably even could have done better, if I'm being honest. But, it is what it is. Anyway, then the Rams get the ball. Very short field, obviously. Score a touchdown after just 3 plays on their second drive. They quickly capitalized on the Dolphins' turnover with an easy touchdown run to Robert Woods to cap the short drive. The 2 touchdowns that the Rams did have, I mean, the Dolphins' defense was just so out of place. I mean, it was just he just strolled in. He wasn't at full speed. I mean, he started off full speed, so he started off on the right. He motioned, came across the formation to the left. Xavier Howard just completely lost him because he was the corner who was covering him, or whoever, if somebody was supposed to pick him up, whoever was supposed to pick him up lost him. Either way, no Dolphins defender was even really close, and he just strolled right in for an easy touchdown. So obviously, that's a little problematic there too, but didn't end up mattering at the end of the day because of the overall general dominance of the Dolphins defense and the other factors that played into it. On the Dolphins' second drive, they punted after 5 plays. Interesting side note here, though, they get to 4th and 10, and they put Matt Hawk in essentially at quarterback. They lined up in a formation that looked like a regular play. He was lined up what looked like in the shotgun with a running back literally right next to him, and it was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So there were a few times, this was the first time in this game that was like they called some kind of play that was supposed to be some trickeration or whatever, maybe possibly to get them to jump off sides, but why, right? Because it was just odd and didn't make any fucking sense at all and wasn't fooling anybody. They ended up just getting a delay of game penalty. And so you might be like, well, maybe they were just trying to, get them to jump off sides, and, it was worth taking the delay of game because then it would give them, 5 more yards or whatever to be able to land it inside the 10, blah, blah, blah. But the 5 yards that they would have got on a offsides or a neutral zone infraction, whatever, wouldn't have got him a 1st down. And then that would defeat the purpose of, the whole point of, being okay with taking the delay of game penalty, because it gives your kicker a little bit more space to try and pin them deep, right? Because then you would have 5 additional yards instead of losing 5 yards and you'd have less cushion, right? So none of it made any sense. It was just really weird, really odd. But anyway, yeah, so they get the delay game, they end up punting, whatever. It was just super strange. Again, not really even a factor in the overall game. It was just weird. Rams punt after 7 plays on their next drive, their 3rd drive. Then the Dolphins go 3 and out on their 3rd drive of the game. Then for the next Ram drive, the next Ram series, they were intercepted after 4 plays. It was on a 2nd down. It was intended for Cooper Kupp. It was, if I remember correctly, it was just like a shallow slant across the middle of the field. And it was a good scheme by the Dolphins defense, by the play calling. Christian Wilkins dropped into coverage, and there was good pressure off the edge. I can't remember who it is. Maybe it was Ogba or something. I can't remember who it is, but there was solid pressure off the edge as well that did, hurry Jared Goff into his throw. But this was one of those plays where there's some nuance to it. So, yes, it was good play call, good execution by the Dolphins defense, and good pressure put on. But at the same time, Goff also shouldn't have even thrown that ball. So there were other options. He could have just thrown it away. Honestly, would have been the fucking, go-to thing, especially with, a defender bearing down on you like that. Just fucking, throw it away, right? So part of the result of that play was Jared Goff making a poor decision. But it is also important to note that he made the poor decision because of, pressure put on by the Dolphins. So again, nuanced, right? Let's see. Then the Dolphins score a touchdown after 6 plays on their 4th drive. This was the turnover, the first turnover that got them a score, and it set them up with, 33 yards to go, right? So, but good on them, right? So again, it was wonderful that they took advantage of that, and they absolutely have to be able to do that. But the only fucking points that they got on offense were, they didn't really have to work all that hard, because then, even on that drive, it took them 6 plays to go 33 yards because it was, some runs with, short passes and stuff like that. Even the touchdown pass to Devontae Parker was only like, 4 or 5 yards or something like that, right? So, the dinking and dunking thing's not going to be able to hold up for too long, especially when you play really good teams, and especially if you get into the playoffs and want to play those good teams there. All right, anyway, moving into the second quarter, the Rams punt after 6 plays on their 5th drive. Then the Dolphins fumble on their 5th drive. After that, it was a Gaskin fumble that left the Rams with super short field. I think they started at like the Dolphins' 15-yard line. But then they, lucked out or whatever, because they ended up getting a fumble right back. Now, I say lucked out, but obviously there was definitely, again, it's nuanced, right? So the Dolphins brought pressure, so good on the play calling, good execution of the Dolphins defense. However, on this particular play, Jared Goff, drops back. He winds up, and as he's about to throw, he didn't yet make any forward motion with his arm, to be fair, so you couldn't call it an incomplete pass. So he hadn't quite got that far yet. But he was winding up. He was going back. He was in the motion to go back and to release, right? And to start his forward motion to release. So he was winding up to throw. Obviously, in real time, all of that stuff happened super fast. So he was winding up to throw. The Dolphins brought pressure with Ogba around the edge. He came unblocked, right? So nobody blocked him. No defensive lineman, no tight end, whatever. However, there was, I believe it was a wide receiver, although possibly a running back, I'm not totally sure, but was coming across the formation from the left to the right. So Ogba came off of the right side of the offensive line or the left side of the defensive line, right? And he came unblocked. That wide receiver or whoever it was, if they would have at least chipped him, just bumped him, Goff would have had enough time to at least get the pass off. Okay, which would have meant that it would not have been a sack fumble, which ended up as a Van Ginkel touchdown from like 73 yards out. So that's why I say a little bit luck and why it's kind of nuanced, because if that wide receiver, literally all he would have had to do was just bump him, and that would have given Goff enough time. But since he didn't, and since the Dolphins called a pressure and a blitz, and the Dolphins defense executed it well, particularly Ogba, and the offensive player for the Rams didn't, it ended up in that result, right? So good on the Dolphins defense for play calling and execution, but luck on on behalf of the Dolphins, because they had an offensive player whiff on even just a chip block, which would have prevented the fumble, which would have prevented the scoop and score. Anyway, so then Rams go 3-and-out on their next drive, their 7th drive, and then the Dolphins score a touchdown on the ensuing punt, right? So they go they go 3 and out. Then they punt. Jakeem Grant runs it back. Now, real quick here, again, on this though, so the previous play before the punt, it was, I want to say it was like 3rd and 4. I don't even think it was all that long or whatever, but they took a deep shot down the field, regardless of what the distance was. It was 3rd down, and they took a deep shot. I want to say it was for Reynolds. I can't remember. Point is, though, Byron Jones unquestionably had a pass interference. Unquestionably had a pass interference. On the replay, he had the fucking receiver's arm hooked and was holding it down. The receiver could only get one arm up. Clear as day, he restricted the receiver's ability to make a play on the ball. Unquestionably. The officials missed it, did not call it, and that's what ended up leading to a 4th down, which then led to the Rams punting, which then led to the Dolphins scoring a touchdown. Now, had the officials called that, which they should have, then it unquestionably would have extended the drive, but it also would have been a spot foul for pass interference, so it would have been like another 30 yards-ish down the field. The Dolphins unquestionably would not have gotten that punt return for a touchdown if the officials would have called that penalty like they should have. They didn't, so they lucked out there, and then the Dolphins special teams executed well, extremely well, which sprung Jakeem Grant free to get the touchdown. So again, nuance, right? The Dolphins executed well, but they never have even should have had the opportunity for that because the officials should have called the pass interference on Byron Jones. Anyway, then after that, on the Rams' 8th drive of the game, they are intercepted after 7 plays. The Dolphins brought a blitz with Baker up the middle. And this is, again, man, like the offense, their offense struggled. There were a couple times where they just let people run through free. So it was great that the Dolphins were bringing a ton of pressure, but some of that pressure was aided by the fact that they didn't have anybody block these guys. Anyway, so up the middle, offensive line failed to block, which allowed the free runner that caused an errant throw and an interception. This was the second interception that Goff threw, and it floated right into Eric Rowe's hands. So, but, and then again, so good on Bake and the defense for executing the blitz package that was given to them, and good on Eric Rowe for being in the right position to capitalize on that floater, right? But that was a mistake. That wasn't really so much on Goff, but that was a mistake on their offensive line for not, blocking Baker. Because had they, then it likely would not have been an errant throw. He at least would have probably been able to set and follow through, and likely would have been either a catch or maybe an incompletion, right? As opposed to the interception. But then the Dolphins go 3 and out. After that, let's see. And then, where was I? Dolphins go 3 and out. Then the Rams get the ball back. After that, then they fumble after 3 plays, which is their 9th drive. This was the one where Kyle Van Noy gets the ball, he gets the recovery, and he runs it all the way back to the 1-yard line. So, he got, like I said, he got a little robbed. It was a fair call. He was definitely down, but man, he got robbed. He got tackled just shy of it. It should have been the second defensive touchdown. It ended up being the second offensive touchdown, which ended up being just a 1-yard run to Gaskin on the very next play. The Dolphins score their touchdown after 1 play on their 6th drive. Then on the Rams' 10th drive, they kick a field goal after 13 plays. And so to be fair, right, Byron Jones, I talked about how Byron Jones had a pass interference penalty that the officials called on him, and they absolutely should have. Well, to be fair, there was, on this drive, there was a roughing the passer penalty called on Eric Rowe that was complete bullshit. Because I think he was being brought on a blitz. It looked like it, but whether it was because of the block or he tripped or whatever, he ended up with arms extended on the ground, slid to the quarterback, slid to Jared Goff into his legs. And they called it roughing the passer because he went low. I mean, it's just stupid. Anyway, I'm not going to get into my dislike for how they've written the rules, but yeah. Anyway, and then also though, Goff later missed a wide open Cooper Kupp on a potential touchdown on that drive. And again, the Dolphins defense was not in place, but they lucked out on that one because Jared Goff was just a little off target. Cooper Kupp had to lay out for it, and he could barely get his fingertips on it. So that was a mistake by Jared Goff, and once again being off target, that cost them 4 points because they were only able to get the field goal instead of a touchdown. Anyway, then the Dolphins end the half after one play. Go into the third quarter. The Dolphins go 3 and out to start their first drive. And look, man, a couple times in the third quarter, they did some more weird, tricky shit that didn't fool anybody and was just kind of like, why are you doing this? So they lined Tua up wide left. I mean, it might be one thing if you do this later on when he's a lot more familiar with the playbook and familiar with, his offense and his playmakers and his offensive line and so on and so forth. Maybe you can add these kind of wrinkles into the offense later, but it was super pointless at this point in, his career, career at the Dolphins, whatever, and it didn't fool anybody. So they lined him up. He just stood there. He didn't even move, right? He didn't even I wish these quarterbacks, I know they're not really going to do anything, but I wish they would at least sell it a little bit better, right? Pretend they're going to run a route or whatever, right? Anyway, it was a direct snap to, I think it was Gaskin, and he failed to convert. It was a 3rd and short, and they failed to convert it, trying to do this weird tricky play thing that didn't, fool anybody. Then the Dolphins force a 3 and out on the next Rams drive. Then the Dolphins have to punt themselves after 5 plays, and after lining Tua up again wide left, this time it was a direct snap to Malcolm Perry, who got just absolutely drilled for a 3 or 4 yard loss. Then the Rams punted after 5 plays. Dolphins go 3 and out. Rams turnover on downs after 7 plays. Dolphins go 3 and out. Into the fourth quarter, score a touchdown after 10 plays. And again, this touchdown, super easy. Robert Woods way open, wide the fuck open. So, obviously didn't ultimately matter, and overall the Dolphins defense was pretty dominant. But they do need to be a bit better in the run game overall, particularly early on in the game, and, get more penetration into the backfield. And, they can't be letting receivers get wide open like that. Right? They lucked out a little bit because of some overthrows and whatnot and some missed throws by Goff and drop passes and stuff like that. But they're not going to be able to rely on that stuff, every single week either. Just like they're not going to be able to rely on, a special team score or a defensive score every single week. Anyway, then the Dolphins punt after 6 plays. Rams miss a field goal after 11. Dolphins punt after another 6 plays. And then 5 plays more for the Rams, and the game ends. And then, so real quick, just injury watch. Andrew Van Ginkel, Byron Jones, Nick Needham, Brandon Jones, several guys on the defense had injuries and, at least got banged up, had to come off for a little bit, whatever. So, hopefully none of it's super serious. Nick Needham, potentially a knee injury. I'm not really sure what happened with the rest of them. Andrew Van Ginkel was interesting. It looked like he kind of sort of got kicked in the face on accident by Cooper Kupp, and maybe his cleat got underneath his helmet, and then when he took his helmet off, it looked like he was bleeding out of his ear. So I have no idea what the fuck was going on there, but he got banged up. So obviously we're gonna have to keep an eye on that, and especially because, like I said, if the Dolphins are going to make a push, especially if they want to try and win the division and then maybe even get past just the first round in the playoffs, they're going to have to stay healthy and remain one of the healthier teams in the league. Because look, I know people don't like it. They don't want to hear it, but the Dolphins are absolutely overperforming. Not just their expectations, but really they're overperforming for where they actually are as a team right now. Now, maybe they do get better. Maybe Tua does blossom, become the superstar, and maybe, you know, the defense does continue to gel, blah, 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 and get better and better and better. But going into this year, the roster, the coaching staff was completely new again, so you got to have time for them to gel and get chemistry, and that was obviously seen early on from the defense where they were struggling and now have picked it up, and the offense just unquestionably has to do better across the board, and has not played overall particularly well throughout the entire season and needs to do far better. So, you know, maybe they get there someday, but they're just not there yet, and they are definitely exceeding expectations and overproducing, in large part because of, you know, the teams that they've had to play being super beat up and so on and so forth, the added context of the season overall and how teams are affected by, you know, injuries and COVID and so on. So to wrap this up, that's why, like I said, going forward, there are a bunch of games. You know, the season can turn out in all kinds of ways. Crazy things can happen, whatever. And God knows this is one of the craziest seasons for sure in my lifetime that I know of, etc., because of the pandemic, the civil unrest, because of, you know, the injuries, the ungodly amount of injuries that continue to happen week in, week out. Anyway, right? So, they got a long way to go. They got a long way to go, and they're definitely exceeding expectations because of all those things. And I just need to see a lot more consistency, right? And the offense needs to pick it up, and we need to see them do it, you know, in a year that's not marred by these things, and so on and so forth. So I hope they do. The next big test, though, is going to come next week. Arizona is a good team. Like I said, I think they are going to be missing Kenyon Drake, which is a big deal for them. We do have to travel for that game. We are going to Arizona for it, so we'll see how that goes. And Arizona currently is on their bye week, so they're going to be coming off the rest. So we'll see how all that plays out, and we'll see how next week goes, man. And we'll see how Tua does in his first start on the road. And see if the defense can continue to play at the level that they played in this game, right? So, anyway, that's how I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspectives. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alert. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And, of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I'm out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.